I'm going to ask that we call the roll, if you would, please.
Senator Barrow.
Present.
Present. Dr. Birch. Present. Judge Green. Judge Guillory. Ms. Hadley. Present. Mr. Hanneman. Present. Dr. Hook. Present. Ms. Moody. Present. Captain Patu. Present. Honorable Russell. Present. Ms. Shelton. Present. Captain Sanji. Present. Dr. St. Germain. Dr. Thurber. Present. And Ms. Wascom. Present. We have 12 members present.
Thank you so very much. As I begin to make my opening comments, I do want to say thank you to each one of you who have played such an integral role in the progress that we've made with Charlie's Law. And as I stated before, we still yet have a lot of work to do. I see my good friend in the audience, the judge, Judge Ritchie. I will forever call you Judge Ritchie, so everybody has to get used to it. But she's with our Ombudsman's Office for Children. And then, of course, I see Charlie's parents in the audience, which I'm so glad for your intestinal fortitude and bringing this issue to light, A, and B, making sure that you just stayed the course with us along this process. And then so many more, the Department of Children and Family Services, who have played a great role, as well as the Department of Education. I want to say thank you to each of you, because certainly we could not have gotten to where we are today without the help and support of everybody having their hands on the plow, pushing forward, pushing through some of the difficult situations. And I'm going to tell you, my staff know this very well. Attorney Christine Peck and Attorney Trapp, who have played such and have held my hand and kept me sane throughout the entire process, know that we've gone through a lot. We've had a lot of meetings, spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we get this right. At the end of the day, there is one goal that I have, and that's ensuring that all our children are safe. I know that it may have been difficult with some of the decisions, and we did make a few compromises along the way so that we can give, especially child care providers, time to make the adjustments and changes. But I know that we all have the same goal, and that is to ensure that we raise healthy children that have a good start, that are able to become productive citizens in society. The situation that happened with Charlie's parents, while it is the only one that we may be aware of, I can assure you it's not the only one that has happened. And so going forward, we're going to do our best. And because of all the great people that I have serving on this task force, I believe that we are going to leave great marks and strides that really change how, A, reporting is done. That's already in place. That's the first part of this. And then B, making sure that there are consequences, that we have smaller classrooms to try to ensure that it doesn't happen again, and at best we minimize it the best we can. So again, I want to say thank you to many of you who are in the audience who have played an integral role. We have a lot of work left to do. There are a lot of pockets, I call them, of unresolved issues still that we need to address. But with that said, I will give just real highlights of what we accomplished during the session. And then I'm going to ask the staff to maybe to go a little bit more in depth with that, because the reporting was one of the issues that we had a glaring concern with, because it was unclear in terms of how the investigations were done. And what we found is that 16% of the cases that were reported never had followed through with them in terms of who picked them up and who really truly investigated them. So now we know that the Department of Children and Family Services is going to be the first point of entry when there is a case that is reported. It would go through the Department of Children and Family Services. That was, to me, one of our major issues. We also dealt with hold up. Well, maybe I'll just stop right there, and I'll just give it over to you, Amanda, to pick up all the highlights, because paper is all over the place, and I'm not following everything. So let's turn Amanda Trapp on, please. Okay, great.
So as Senator Barrow stated, this was a very comprehensive piece of legislation that touched on a lot of different things that were brought up over the last year with the task force. So one of the things that we did is we discovered that all school employees, as part of their background check requirements, did not have to have the state central registry check. So the early learning centers did, but not the schools. So we brought now so that all school employees will have to have the state central registry check as well. And schools, beginning August 1st, 2025, they cannot hire an employee who was on the registry prior to August 1st, 2018, and that date was chosen due to a change in the appeals process. And then moving forward, any employee that's added to the registry after August 1st, 25 will not be able to be employed any longer. We also, Senator Barrow stated, we brought in more preschool programs to be licensed as early learning centers. They had some non-public schools that were exempt, so we brought everyone, and we pulled in some minimum safety standards for children, mostly dealing with ratios and supervision. A lot of them came directly from the Department of Education's rules, and so we put those into statute. We also have, so in current law, they're all educators, all teachers, and child care providers were required to do mandatory reporter training, but the schools were responsible for keeping up with who did the training and who's not. So one component we added is to have all the schools report to the Department of Education, beginning with the next school years, of who's completed the training, just so we can see from a state level where there might be some gaps. We made some changes in the children code to various definition. We have expanded who DCFS will be responsible for investigating. So we've moved away from them only responding to cases where the caretaker is the alleged perpetrator. We also put some requirements for DCFS to call law enforcement instead of, because we had some, as we talked about, issues with, emails, faxing. We didn't know if law enforcement was receiving the referrals. So we've put that in law. We put a requirement for the Department of Children and Family Services to notify the child ombudsman within 3 days of cases where there was a child death where there was alleged abuse. We changed the language with the DCFS determinations. So that was the valid, invalid, to substantiated and unsubstantiated. And then we also added a provision to provide for liability for sexual and abuse in school setting to allow for damages to be awarded for medical and behavioral health expenses due to sexual abuse situations at a school. And then we have the Department of Education and DCFS here, and they can get more into the details about the implementation of this.
All right, great. And thank you. That was a great overview. And so if anyone have questions, we will take them after we hear from the departments. We are going to ask, and before I do that, let me do this. We do have some new members who are now on the task force, and that was a part of the SCR that we actually did to continue the task force, because we know that, again, we have a lot of work to do, and this work must continue. And so as we were going through the process, there were certain individuals that came up. It was like we should have them at the table. And so now we have some of those individuals now serving. So Amanda Moody with CASA is here. Okay, great. And would you like to say a few words, Miss Amanda?
Sure. My name is Amanda Moody. I'm State Director for Court-Appointed Special Advocates, and I'm just excited and grateful to be a part of this committee and hope to contribute to the work that's being done.
Awesome. I know that you will. Also, we have Captain Joe Patat. Patu? Okay, Patu. Okay. Captain, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. My name is Joe Patu. I'm the captain in the State Police Special Investigations Section, which primarily we focus on. One of our main missions is child exploitation and human trafficking. So I'm glad to be a part of this to help bridge those gaps with law enforcement throughout the state and kind of help educate everyone to all get on the same page.
Awesome. We're glad to have you. And last but not least, Dr. Birch.
Hi, good morning. My name is Dr. Barry Birch.
Are we on? Okay.
My name is Dr. Barry Birch. I'm the clinical director at the Children's Bureau of New Orleans, where we provide evidence-based grief and trauma services. And we work closely with the Jefferson and the Orleans Parish Child Advocacy Centers. So, and I am here on behalf of the Louisiana Board of Psychology.
Well, we are very happy to have each one of you. We know that you bring great value to this task force, and certainly we look forward to working with each one of you. And if you have any recommendations or suggestions, never be shy to send those to us. We greatly appreciate it. Okay, so as we look at the agenda here, we kind of gone over a brief overview of Act 409, Charlie's Act. But before I move any further, let me go ahead and approve the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from October 22nd, December 11th, January 15th, February 26th, from 24 and 25? Is there a motion to approve the minutes? So we have a motion by Ms. Sanjay? No, that's right. Judge Russell. DA. I'm sorry. DA Russell. And is there a second? Okay. A second by Dr. Hook. Okay, so the minutes have been moved. Now we will ask the departments. We're going to start off with the Department of Children and Family Services because they have had some reorganization to the department. And we would like to, you're going to do it from here?
Well, I'll go.
Okay. You can do it from here.
Okay, that's fine.
Can you give us an overview
Yes,
of
ma'am.
the part of the law did go into effect on August 1st? And do you have an update on any of that information?
Sure do.
Okay, great.
I'm Brett Hanneman. I'm the Assistant Secretary of Child Welfare, newly appointed. Good morning. Good morning,
morning.
Senator Barrow, members of the task force, and valued partners in Louisiana's children. Thank you for the opportunity to update you on our progress with Act 409 and the transformation underway with DCFS to become more child-centered and of course, outcome-driven agency right now at this point. First, let me start off with talking about aligning the language, because that was something that was very important and forefront of this bill as we were bringing it through. So we've replaced the outdated terms like valid and invalid with substantiated and unsubstantiated, aligning with Louisiana and 48 other states. This change is reflected in our systems, our policies, and our training and public-facing materials. The next thing that we talked about a few seconds ago was clarifying mandatory reporters. Foster parents, residential facility staff, probation officers, and employees of DCFS and the Office of Juvenile Justice are now clearly identified as mandatory reporters. And we've updated all of those on our brochures and our foster caregiver guidance to reflect all of these changes. And then we're defining investigative authority. Act 409 clarifies when DCFS investigates versus when law enforcement should take the lead. DCFS now focuses on cases involving caregivers and others closely connected to a child's residence or licensed care setting. The most serious harm we usually go to law enforcement, but with us taking a lead with the investigation with them, and we've already been on calls with that, with the captain. Responding to child-on-child
Mr.
sex.
Heineman,
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Heineman,
sorry.
before you go any further, do you have how many cases you guys have received to date since August 1st? How many calls, maybe?
Since August 1st?
Yes.
I do not have that.
Since y'all changed the process.
Right.
Okay.
I can get that for you,
Okay,
but it's
yes.
kind of early. So we usually do it with monthly.
Okay.
But I'll let me dig in and see what I can find, at least for the first couple of weeks. and see
Maybe
where we
the
are.
first 10 days?
I'll
How
get
many-
that to you.
I'm just curious.
Okay.
Okay.
Next is responding to child-on-child sexual abuse. We've implemented a family assessed model for cases with parental fault ensuring safety and support without unnecessary labeling. This includes school-based incidents referred by law enforcement. Specialized staff have been trained, and a statewide training rollout is planned for the fall. Law enforcement and referrals and fatality notifications. DCFS and law enforcement must now refer misdirected reports to each other within 24 hours. DCFS must notify the Louisiana Child Ombudsman within 3 business days of a child fatality under investigation for abuse or neglect. These requirements are built into our system, workflows, and stakeholder communications. And the new safeguards for schools and childcare, DCFS will conduct a state central registry checks for public and private school employees hired after August 1st, 2025. Private school pre-kindergarten will now be licensed as early learning centers. DCFS will conduct background clearances for potential employees. All child care workers must complete DCFS mandatory reporting training by September 30th annually, with LDOE publishing compliance rates and starting in the 2026-27 school year. And the agency now we're being reorganized around children. We're undergoing a full reorganization to become a truly child-centered agency. We're moving beyond and toward a unified structure that puts child safety and stability and well-being at the center of every decision. Strengthening operational excellence and accountability, building workforce support so our frontline teams can deliver real results, and removing barriers to our services, increasing transparency and collaboration with legislators and community partners. Secretary Harris continues to lead boldly, focusing on data-driven improvements that will carry us forward, and that's a win for all of us, but most importantly for Louisiana's children. Just to touch on the one-door policy that's going to take place from the split of the agency on October 1st, about 42% of DCFS staff will transition to LDH, Louisiana Department of Health, and the Louisiana Workforce Commission under the One Door Initiative. Governor Landry has a clear vision for One Door to strengthen the state's social services and workforce programs by creating a centralized benefits system. This is not about the door into benefits system, it's about the door out so families can reach their goals and achieve their dreams. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
I do. I have a few questions, and I don't know if anybody else does. And if you do, please press your button. And if you're in the audience and you have any questions or would like to make any comments, please fill out one of the cards so that we can acknowledge and actually give you the opportunity to kind of state your points.
Senator, I do have that update. Dr. Hook had that
Okay.
number that you were looking for. So 10 reports have been accepted for alleged child-on-child sexual abuse between children who reside in the same home. There have been no accepted reports for incidents in school settings at this time,
Okay.
okay?
So, in the first 10 days? Wow. Wow. Okay. That just goes to show why this work is still so very important. That's one a day. Okay, let me not get stuck there. So I do have a few questions. We've heard in the moving of shift work for those child welfare workers. Can you tell me about the shift work that's going to happen and the plan and how many employees that's going to actually entail, that's going to be hired, and the qualifications of those employees?
Yes, ma'am. So we are starting a second shift,
Okay.
and our goal is to start that for September 15th. And what that will do, will add 53 workers to
What's the date again?
September 15th.
Okay.
And that's when everybody's going to be on board. We're doing the screening process and everything right now at this time.
Okay.
I will tell you this, which is something that was very positive. When we put the second shift out, we had over 700 applications for the 53 spots.
Wow.
And we've gone through a lot of them. A lot were not qualified.
Okay.
But since then, we've gotten another 600 applications.
Well, that definitely is a good sign.
It's a good sign. So what this is going to do is, and I think we've talked about it a little bit, but I'll give you a little bit more of the specifics. We'll start a second shift. That second shift will come on at 1:30 in the afternoon, and they will work till midnight.
Okay.
We looked at the majority of our cases that were coming through were between 2 and 4 p.m., which makes sense with kids getting off of school. So what we wanted to do was instead of have, we ask our workers to go and take care of everybody else's families, but time to get off at 4:30, they really couldn't. They had to stay on, and especially some of these cases that are more serious, they had to do investigations. It's almost like it was hypocritical that we're asking you to take care of everybody else and not your own. So we just started looking at other states. They had a couple other states that had implemented a second shift. We wanted to see how they did it and would work. When we think about it, we're a lot like a hospital. Kids are 24 hours. So we have to be more than just 8 to 4:30. And so what this will do will help us close some of the backlog of some of the cases, but also if cases come in between 1 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we have workers that are going to be on until midnight looking at these cases. We looked at midnight to 8 o'clock. And most of those, Captain, you know this, are more law enforcement. And we do have someone on call to where if we have to go and a child does need to be picked up, we can do that. So this second shift is, we're excited about it. What we did is we went and we looked at the volume of calls around the state in each one of our regions and determined how many workers we would need there. So what we're going to do is we're setting up 2 different shifts. So let's say we have a second shift A and a second shift B. They'll work 4 days. The next shift will work 3 days. Then we'll flip-flop and alternate. So they're alternating every other weekend. So this now covers weekends, weeknights, and holidays.
Okay.
And
So-
we just think going forward, it's going to be a few things, but I think one of the most important things that stuck out with me throughout this process is that I think it will provide a little more stability for the children if that caseworker can stay with them and making sure that the visiting courts and everything that needs to be going forward.
Okay, so we have 53 new employees that will be onboarded by September 15th. And just tell me a little bit about the qualifications are still the same that are required now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I can tell you, because I went through a lot of those applications, we had people with PhDs applying, which is something, I haven't been here that long, but it's something that I haven't seen. So I think we're getting a higher qualified candidate to come in, and we're going to need that because the second shift is really, you got the people that are self-responsible, motivated, and making sure we have the right person there, during those night hours.
That is extremely important. And one of the things that you know that I have been a huge proponent for and about is pay, right? I have been fighting for that, and I know that it is an issue that have come up and that we discussed during the last session. And I know that you guys were looking to try to make some adjustments. Were those adjustments made? And then how can I continue to help with that?
Yes, ma'am. So what we're doing right now is we are doing we're conducting research to where we are looking at other states to see where we fall in as far as our rate, our scale. And we're going to have that soon. But
Okay.
what we did for the second shift was we put in an incentive there with $4 more an hour
Okay.
so we could get a highly qualified candidate. What we're trying to avoid is losing all of our best people from the first shift moving to the second. But I'm going to
Oh,
need
wow.
a couple of good people from that first shift to supervise and lead the second shift going forward, so we still have that, institutional knowledge and
Oh,
experience.
absolutely.
At nighttime on that second shift.
I see this is going to be a very
We're excited.
delicate
We're excited about
balancing
it.
act,
It
but
is.
I know that you guys, I have no doubt that you will. And then lastly, because I'm gonna have to thank Secretary Matlock, even though I'm saddened. I know that things happen, and he had to move on, but he plays such an integral role in so much of this because he was so committed to this. As many of you are. So during the session, I also passed a resolution asking you guys to work with OTS, which that's another component. So I have another sheet that has a list of items that we found were gaps, right, along the way. And so one of those gaps was dealing with OTS, the communications between the departments. Have you guys started having those conversations yet? Is that a question for you, Dr. Hook?
We've had meetings with LDH and with DOE.
Okay.
So there are more open lines of communication, I will say, going forward, because with a lot of this in Act 409, we have to be more aligned because a lot of us have added responsibilities and they cross over.
Okay.
So there is progress being made there.
But
What's
what about OTS? Because there was so much that they shared with me that they could do that would be more cost efficient, I believe, to help it make this process a little bit more streamlined.
I don't have specifics, but we have been meeting with, OTS is the one that is in left field for me, that I'm still having to grasp and reach in since I've only been doing
Okay.
this for 6 weeks. But you can
Hold
help out a
on,
little bit
Dr.
more.
Hook, we're
Go
going to
ahead.
put you on.
I would just add that under DCFS, there is an Office of Management and Finance, and that's where most of our technology lives. And so those conversations probably are occurring under that Office of Management and Finance, may not be occurring, as directly with child welfare. So we definitely can get you information on, when those
Yes.
meetings occurred and what is being discussed.
So what I would like is for our next meeting is to be able to receive an update on those conversations, what's happening, because it appeared that when we met with them, that there were some things that just, if the communication had been there, I think some things could have been avoided. And they seem to have some recommendations in terms of some things that can actually be done to actually streamline the process. So I do have questions. I'm sorry, guys. Hold on. Ms. Wascom, look, this is our wordsmithing person, right? Words matter.
That's right. That's right.
One of the things I will always remember about you is that one particular piece, because that is so important. As a matter of fact, in another piece of legislation that came up with the valid and invalid, and I said, we need to revisit that, and maybe we need to use words like substantiated and unsubstantiated. So we're working on that in another piece of legislation.
Fantastic.
Yes, Ms. Wascom, I'm sorry.
Okay, and y'all know I have tons of questions. First, the mandated reporter brochure. Can we get a copy of that? Can y'all
Yes,
email? Okay.
yes, absolutely.
And it is online as well.
Yes.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Okay,
yes,
I
ma'am.
didn't see it. But I'll dig around.
Hold up.
Yeah.
Because we shouldn't have to dig around to find that. Exactly where is that?
I believe it's on the main page. Mona said she just.
Mona, how you doing, Mona? Sitting back there in the corner so nobody can see you.
I'm in the back.
Mona, come on up to the table.
Hey,
Come on.
I literally just did like a 30-second. I
Oh,
did not
okay.
dig. So, like, it's not. I'm just asking.
Is
So I
it
was like,
is it on the initial page when you pull it up, or is there a link? Is there something that gives you the wording where you can go and click when you first open the page? No, ma'am. And introduce yourself. We're not gonna give you a hard time today.
Mona Chapman, Deputy Assistant Secretary in Child Welfare. And so part of the task force works, yes, last session was to be able to really make sure that the reporting of child abuse and neglect information was easily found on the website. So there is a button that says Report Child Abuse on the home page.
Okay.
That link will take you directly to information about how to report and the mandatory reporter information, which does include the link to the new brochure. And so what I'm going to do is, just for ease, I will send Brett and Dr. Hook the direct link so
Okay.
that can be shared with the task force members.
Okay, great.
but the issue is I was looking for the word brochure, and it doesn't say brochure. But it does have the link from it just says like portal guide, online form. Yeah, I mean, it still takes you, I'm sure, to the information. It just didn't say brochure when I was looking. But that's not, I just was curious of what the update was.
And I do not have my computer, so I cannot pull it up and look at it myself, because what I do want is I want it to be clear and easy for people to be able to go and take a look at it. I don't want people to have to try to figure it out. And I don't know, did you have to, so has she not explained that just now, would you have known to look for that?
I would have hit report abuse, which is what I had done, but I didn't see like brochure.
Okay.
I just didn't know if like a printable brochure was different than what was online.
No, actually, we did update the brochure. It is online, and then the actual printed brochure is on order.
Gotcha.
Okay.
That's all. That's all.
Hot
I was
off the
trying-
press.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay.
So when do we expect to have the brochure, the written version?
I can get that to you. I don't
Okay.
know how long it'll take for the hard copies to arrive, but I'll ask. and get-
So we will have a meeting next month, and we're gonna just talk about that in a little bit. But I'm thinking mid next month, so hopefully you think we can have it by then?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, all right, okay. Don't run away, Mona. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Wascom.
Okay, so, you talked about the 16 cases had no follow-up, 16%.
16%, that's what,
16.
did I say 16 cases? Because I meant
16.
16, yeah, it was 16%.
16%. So I have several questions around that. Is it because there is a backlog of cases? And did y'all identify the specific reasons of why there was no follow-up?
I believe that the information that Senator Barrow was reporting was from session when we had talked about cases that were called in that we were not at that time accepting for investigation because the law, Act 409, had not gone into effect, and we were still talking about what would end up in this bill. So those were not accepted by us for investigation. And then what we were hearing is that they did not meet criteria in many instances for law enforcement to investigate either. And so that is really, I think, the main thing that fueled this bill being passed and Act 409 going into effect.
Okay. I just.
So to answer your question, those cases probably were not investigated because they fell between that
crack.
That crack,
Okay.
where no one really picked
Okay.
it up nor followed through.
Okay, perfect. That was just, I wanted clarification. So my next question is about the child on child. Do y'all have a written process out yet for investigating that?
Yes, actually, we developed the alternative response program. So
Okay.
we're taking a different approach on those cases where instead of the investigative model, understanding that this has occurred between children, we're doing more of a family assessment and support of those families. We developed the program, we developed policy around the program.
Awesome.
And we can share that policy.
Yeah, I would love to see that. And then my next question is, the 10 cases that has come in since August 1st. What's the turnaround time until, not to like a phone call, but like a face-to-face with a worker?
Okay, so right now, those alternative response cases have a standard 5-day turnaround
Okay.
for making the initial contacts. However, depending on the particular situation, that can be bumped up if we need to go sooner. But that is the latest that an initial face-to-face contact should be made.
Okay, awesome. I think that would be, at this moment, that's all I have.
Okay. All right, thank you, Ms. Wascom. Very good questions. Ms. Shelton.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Start with the easiest one, I think. For the second shift staff, does that include like foster care workers, family service workers? I'm thinking if a parent needs to do a visitation after their work hours to make it work so that they can see their children and keep their job, no?
No, these are really just frontline workers,
Investigative.
investigative,
Investigation.
yes, for
Okay.
investigation.
At this time,
Okay. The first rollout.
Yeah, the
First
Maybe in the
rollout. Yeah.
future if this
Correct.
works. Okay, because I could see that being beneficial as well. My second, well, I have a couple questions about the child-on-child cases. The first one I had was, so if during your assessment, and Mona, you probably would be the best to answer this, that you do determine there was parental involvement, does it switch over to investigation at that point? Is that something you guys are assessing?
Yes, so that is part of the training and the policy that we developed, is that we have to make sure that while we're assessing, that we're also assessing if there is any allegation of abuse or neglect specifically related to parental culpability for that sexual abuse. And when that happens, then another report is made and it's assigned to an investigator.
Okay. And when you're doing the assessment process, I know in the investigative process, you'll look at the family's history with the agency. Do you also do that at assessment to see if that child, there's been an assessment of that child previously or an investigation?
Yes, yeah, that'll be part of the agency history review.
Okay, and that is done with the child-on-child? Okay. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hadley.
Yes, I only have one question, but before I say that, I'm just very excited for the movement forward, and it's very encouraging, and it's just very exciting. So I'm glad to hear all of the changes and coming together and things like that. But my one question I have with the child on child, whenever you receive those reports and do those assessments, is law enforcement involved immediately? How do you connect, or do you wait to connect? How does that work?
Well, if law enforcement, our typical protocol is if we know that law enforcement is already involved, we do reach out to them to do joint investigations. That's the same for these assessments as well. If they are not, and it's involving a child sexual abuse, then we would make that referral to law enforcement.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Out of curiosity, these 10 cases, where are they in the state?
Well, I don't have that, but I can find it out while we're here and get that to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, even just going back just over the past year, if you could tell us, like, regionally, like, is there a high prevalence of abuse in certain areas than others?
There are fluctuations in different areas, but some of that has to do with consistent reporting. You know, that some areas report more
Gotcha.
traditionally than others. So, but we can get that for you as
Okay.
well, the regional data.
Okay, great. Dr. Birch.
Thank you. I am actually very excited to hear about alternative response, and something that we work with both in Jefferson and Orleans is problematic child sexual behavior, right? Which is what child on child often is. It's problematic behaviors, and so part of it is the policy side of it that has to change, and like defining, what ages are we going to look at and say that this is qualifying for alternative response. But on the other side of that is it does take a while for intervention to also happen and to have providers who are trained to address problematic sexual behavior. And so one of the things we often struggle with is like families remaining with DCFS to have some oversight with safety while they're going through that process. And I'm curious if the alternative response plan includes like some ongoing safety monitoring along with kind of resourcing for evidence-based and appropriate intervention.
Yeah, so the alternative response assessment timeframe is the standard for what an investigation would be. So that would be 60 days. What we also left in for these cases is that if there is the need for extensive ongoing monitoring and support, like a very high-risk case, that can continue to move on to our family services section. But the goal for the AR program is really to provide some more intensive assessment and support within that 60-day window. Based on the capacity that we have to service families on a longer-term basis.
I think
That's where we will be leaning more on like the child advocacy centers and the emphasis on making those referrals to those support organizations that can follow the family for a longer period of time.
with, I think one of the things that we struggle with is, right, as a treatment provider, we're not a child advocacy center, so we don't have a responsibility to
Dr. Birch, would you kind of
lean
lean in
Yes,
just a little bit
I can.
more?
My voice
opposed
doesn't
to
carry.
you?
But to really like monitor safety is not the role of treatment providers necessarily, or, if it rises to the level of like, if they drop out of treatment, where does the responsibility for families to follow through on those interventions and to, successfully complete. And then also the availability of intervention, I think, is very low, like even in like a pretty we have a good amount of providers in like the region we're in, but I would say we are like, you could count on one hand the number of people that do evidence-based intervention to address problematic sexual behavior. And so I think just as we look at alternative response, making sure there's intervention to actually support families who are going through that process will be very important.
Well, and, I think that's going to be the critical for us to do when we assess families,
Yeah.
to see if there is abuse or neglect. Because without abuse or neglect, we really cannot, like, for the caretaker and the caregiver responsibility, the legal options are really not there unless there is abuse or neglect present by a caregiver. And so, some of our ability to legally require supports and referrals is still going to be limited.
Right.
But if it's, when we assess, we do see that there is abuse or neglect, then that's when we really need to bump it up to an investigation and do that assessment as to whether or not court intervention is needed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shelton?
Follow-up questions.
Sure.
So 10 that were accepted, do we know if there were any not accepted for the child-on-child allegations?
I do not know. I know that we are accepting, all of them that are sent. There were none that were reported to our knowledge about from a school setting.
Okay.
I can follow up to ask, were there any that may have been reported, but related to like children in the home, but I cannot imagine that we would have not accepted them.
Okay. And then are you going to continue to keep the data on these cases and keep it as school versus home and the child-on-child?
Yes, I've requested an ongoing
Okay.
report be established to be able to see that, like any given point in time, window of time, that we can pull that data.
Great. Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, and before I go to you, Ms. Wascom, I believe in one of our task force meetings before, y'all talked about a dashboard that you have that's kind of like on display where you're kind of watching and monitoring like each case. You guys are still doing that?
I think that's like probably a good update for like whenever we provide the Office of Technology Services
Okay.
and Management and Finance. We are working with them to fine tune some of the systems available. I know right now it's available for the intake staff, and it is accessible for investigation staff. But we're looking to do additional enhancements to make it even that much better for our field staff.
So those 10 cases, that would be considered intake, correct?
Yeah, so the 10 cases were reports that were made in intake, but then they were accepted for alternative response.
So they're no longer on the dashboard? Just help me understand that. I guess I don't understand.
Yes,
Okay.
they will be. Because this is so new,
Okay.
what we do have to create is take all that system development and then create reports.
Okay.
And place that on such like a dashboard so that it would be accessible for all.
Okay. All right, Ms. Wascom.
Just a couple other follow-ups, and I'm not sure if y'all can answer this or if this is a a LDOE question. But the registry checks. So it says early learning centers, public and private. Where does like LSMSA or charter schools fall? Are they not required to also have checks?
Yeah, I would defer to LDOE
Okay.
in terms of who is included in what category.
Okay.
At this point, we are ready to receive them.
Okay.
And through LDOE, they have a system of verification of who can request a clearance.
Okay.
They're coming up next.
Okay, well then I will actually wait and ask my next question to them. Sorry.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions for you at this time, Ms. Mona, or for DCFS, and so we are now going to ask the Department of Education to come forth. How you doing, Miss Ashley? And my friend Tony Leegee. How you doing?
Just fine.
I don't have a card for you, Ashley. Ashley, yeah. Just hand it. She'll get it. Okay, thank you. Okay, introduce yourself, please.
Good morning. I'm Ashley Townsend with Department of Education.
Tony Leegee, I serve as Executive Counsel to the Department of Education.
Okay, well, again, I just want to thank y'all so very much. You guys played a very pivotal role in helping us get this bill across the finish line. There was so much stuff that came up towards the end that we were not expecting. But we want to thank you once again. Can y'all give us a brief update in terms of where you are and how things are kind of working out?
Yes, ma'am. So one of the first things that we thought about is what collaboration would be needed across state agencies. So we worked with DCFS a good bit. They were really helpful. We collaborated with them and OTS in creating a way for school systems to be able to access the Child Abuse and Neglect Registry via an EdLink portal that they already have access to. So OTS was able to help us create that additional security access for HR personnel to be able to without using us as a middleman, access a system that they already can use to request those DCFS checks. So that was a big step. We also met with LDH just to make sure they were aware there are an additional 254 sites that may need to be inspected in the coming months whenever those schools submit their licensing applications.
How many again?
254. And so we talked with them about what barriers could come up, what things we should think through. And we shared with them some of the initial concerns that were brought to our attention by the non-public schools. They are actually, they shared with us some information that they asked that we include in communications to non-public schools. So we shared that with them, some contact information, some information to reference for them. And then LDH also asked us to pass along that in their initial inspection for the year, they would do kind of a pre-licensing check with the school so they could let them know when we apply these licensing requirements to your school, here's how you might stack up, here's some things you can go ahead and prepare for or think about or start looking through. So we were able to pass that information to the schools, which has alleviated some of their concerns about what that licensing inspection might look like. We also talked with the Office of the State Fire Marshal. They conduct annual checks as well, and that check has to be in place in order for a license to be granted. The non-public schools also get annually inspected by the Office of the State Fire Marshal. So we talked with them about how to use their beginning of year check that they already do, and how they can use the report that they get from that check to satisfy the requirement in our system for an Office of State Fire Marshal check, because the standards align with the early, as long as it's that age group of children, the standards that they check for are the same. So that provided some clarity and some peace of mind as far as being able to schedule inspections. They can schedule that one for the year instead of having to do a second. And then moving forward annually, we talked about some changes in the way their report is labeled. That will make it work nicely with our certification system, our licensing system. We've also established some good contacts with them as questions continue to arise. There are things that don't really fall under LDOE's purview, but now we have contacts in those agencies that we can pass those questions along to and those concerns for their consideration. We also talked with DCFS about the mandated reporter training, just to make sure that we can provide accurate information to school systems about what's required and where they can find the resources that they need. We have made some changes to policy that will go to Bessie for consideration at their meeting next week in the Early Childhood Bulletin, the Louisiana Handbook for School Administrators, the Louisiana Handbook for Non-Public School Administrators, and the Charter Schools Bulletin to address mandated reporter concerns, the training, those different pieces of policy that just need to be brought into alignment with the components of the Act. And so we talked with those state agencies about all of those things. And then the next area that we looked at is non-public school concerns. We had some non-public schools reach out early on, and we engaged others along the way just to start hearing their initial things that they were concerned about. We bucketed those. Some we could address through guidance and just providing clarity to some requirements and policy to let them know there's still a way to do carpool. There's still a way to go to chapel on your campus. There's still a way to take the children to lunch in the cafeteria. So thinking through what could be addressed in guidance versus what necessitated a policy change on our part. So we have a set of bulletin revisions, again, that'll go to Bessie next week. To change anything in that bulletin, it has to go to the Early Childhood Care and Education Advisory Council. So we were able to get that set of revisions on that council's agenda as well as on the Non-Public School Council's agenda. Both groups provided helpful feedback to the revisions, and so they're tracking along to go to Bessie next week. And then we also looked at whether any of the concerns that non-public schools had were something that we couldn't address. And so, one of the concerns related to adding an additional background check. There are some schools that will do 3 background checks on one individual teacher now. And so I communicated those with Senate staff. They were really helpful in just looking to understand the concerns, and we can continue to look through at, what if anything should be done to just alleviate the number of background checks on each individual person and make sure that we aren't applying duplicative processes in any way. And then another concern that has come up has been square footage requirement, which is in Bessie policy, and also partially in fire marshal guidelines. But we are talking with the non-public schools. We're scheduling a series of visits. We've conducted one already and have several scheduled once the children get settled into the school year a little bit, to go out and just see what do they currently have in place, what makes sense to apply in terms of those square footage requirements. We don't want to take away a requirement or make anything too restrictive or too lenient. So we want to be able to navigate that with confidence that we understand the context. So we'll be looking to gain that through a series of on-site visits in the coming weeks. And so then there was a series of communication. So the next thing we thought about is, all right, we've got all these things that we've thought about now. How can we make sure that everyone knows? We have an active note for system leaders document we create every year for system leaders, school leaders, whoever, and we published that at the end of July. This act also had its own section of our video recording call that we do to highlight key legislative actions of session. That went out at the end of July. We had a newsletter entry that included our minimum standards document. So we're required to produce a document that has the minimum standards to send this to schools. So this document was created. It's linked on our website. We emailed it to the non-public schools. We sent it to the public schools, and it was on our charter school call, our system leaders call, and presented at the non-public school council meeting and presented at the superintendent's advisory council meeting. So we have it out in those ways. And it's also linked in 2 different places on our website, just in case someone has trouble finding it. We try to anticipate what different things they might be looking for to make sure that they could find it. So we also had a direct email out to non-public school leaders. We were concerned about some schools that might be very small. They may not have a lot of staff who are tracking what goes on in Baton Rouge from day to day. And so we sent an email to all those school leaders. We worked through the process of getting emails returned and then looking and see, that person retired, who's the current contact. And so we updated our contact list some too, but we're able to be that first source of information for a lot of schools that this new requirement was in place, and have followed up since then with a number of phone calls and emails and Zoom calls, just talking through their concerns. We created an FAQ document that's about 14 pages long now or so for them, that addresses lots of their concerns, but also lets them know about some resources that we've made available now. Our early childhood team has curated a series of 3 webinars that they're repeating every couple of weeks from now through December. And these are really targeted toward non-public schools, although any child care provider is invited to attend. And they cover topics like how to access the EdLink system, how to submit an application, what are the requirements in Bulletin 137. And then our plan is to record one of each of these at some point, but we wanted to really encourage the schools to join the calls, to talk with our licensing specialists and ask their questions. We wanted to encourage that one-on-one connection first, and then we'll make those available via recording later on, once we feel like we've made that available. So that was a lot. I'm happy to take any questions, but it's been our pleasure to help facilitate and just make sure that we can make everything as smooth as possible for everyone.
Well, again, I want to say thank you, because you guys were extremely valuable and played a pivotal role for us being able to get this bill completely across the finish line and helping us to, I believe, begin to ease some of the concerns. So I just have a quick question, maybe a few. So you guys have had how many webinars so far?
So we've been conducting these for about 3 weeks now.
Okay.
Participation was pretty slow at the beginning, but everyone is also starting school right now. So we expect it to increase in the coming weeks.
Because that was going to be my next question. Like, how many people have participated? Do you have a number?
The first one, do we have that number today? We don't have that exact number, but we are tracking it, and so I can check and see what the current. I know the first 3 calls, we only had 4 or 5 schools show up for
Per
those.
call?
Yes, ma'am. And
Okay.
so it was pretty slow, but we also know that some schools are just becoming aware, some schools are trying to wrap their heads around other things, and then some schools are trying to start the school year. So we are hoping that participation will increase, which is part of the reason, too, that we wanted to keep offering them over and over again over the coming weeks and months.
And I'm going to go back to the mandatory reporting training program. When will that actually be offered, or when will y'all kind of start, and how y'all going to kind of track that?
So DCFS has the training, and I believe it's updated with the new requirements now on the website. So we communicated that out to schools, reminded them, because they're already supposed to be doing this training. So we reminded them this is a requirement. The collection will start next school year. So we've begun the process of moving that through our data governance team that handles those system build outs, because it'll require some coding. We're going to have the collection for schools, for K-12 schools, and our EdLink reporting system for early childhood centers, and our EdLink Ops reporting system. So they'll be able to use those existing reporting systems to report participation on that. And then we'll have the employees who completed the training, the employees who did not complete the training, and we'll be able to publish those completion rates on our website after that time.
So is that going to be January, or will that be July?
It takes effect with next school year, so 26-27 school year. We'll get that by September 30th, I think, is when they have to submit that to us. And so then we'll try
Of
to...
26 or 27?
27.
Wow.
26.
Okay. 26, okay.
September 30th of 26 is when we'll get everybody's reports, and then we'll be able to post on our website after that.
Okay. But you will have some soft data that you can possibly give us an update maybe at the first of the year?
Would you like us to kind of collect some qualitative, just how it's going?
Yes, I'll like to kind of see how that's moving along.
We
Okay.
can get some information just on their initial feedback if they're, finding completion is, so nothing too quantitative, but at least some feedback on the process.
Because I find that to be, I find that to be a big issue, not just with us, but across the board in terms of tracking, ensuring that everybody's receiving the same information. Because again, that goes back to the reporting process, right? In terms of like looking at who reports or what areas have high level reporting. And I bet you if we actually go and do some type of review of that, you could find that those individuals that have a higher areas where we have reporting, they probably are better trained.
I wonder too, we had talked, Ms. Chapman had mentioned at one point that y'all might be able to help us with some completion rates or some at least completion numbers from year end. I don't think they would be aggregated by or disaggregated by system or anything like that, but we could at least have numbers of completion, maybe.
We can
Hold on, okay.
We
Collaborate.
can have some more collaboration.
Yeah, we can
conversations
chat. I'll
about
add
it.
that to my list for us to talk about.
All right, Miss Wascom.
Okay, so y'all heard the end of my question to Ms. Chapman, but I had questions about the central registry and the background checks. So is it the early learning centers, private and public schools? What about charter schools and LSMSA?
It does apply to charter schools.
Okay.
State schools, I believe they would fall under the requirements to do a background check prior to hire.
Okay. My next question is the background check. Does that cover, does that go all the way to the FBI for a national background check?
So right, and there's the CBC, and then you'll hear us talk about the CCCBC, and so the both of those will go FBI level.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Miss Hadley.
I just wanted clarification on the mandated reporter training. Are you trying to streamline it to one system that's providing that training, or are you still opening the schools to decide where they go to receive that training?
That's an area we talked a little bit about. There's some ambiguity between those two. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
So currently, the mandatory reporter training is on there's access through our website, and they would come to our website in order to register and then complete that training.
Okay.
And we've updated it to reflect the changes from Act 409.
Is that the goal, that y'all want to make it mandatory for that specific training so you have the exact content and accountability? And I only ask because currently, not all CACs do this, but ours, we have a education department. And we also we also allow and inform schools that we can offer mandated reporter training free of charge as well. But I just wanted to get clarity if y'all are trying to move to just one system and one program of it.
There's been some interest both from the non-public schools and from the charter schools in being able to have their trainers trained to offer on-site in-person mandated reporter training as well. And so we've been referring them to DCFS to talk through what that would look like and, if the training that they might offer could be comparable to what's available online. But we've been deferring to DCFS on that question.
Ms. Hadley, so you guys offer it, and you say everybody, all the CACs do not.
Yeah, every CAC is different
Okay.
in capacity and employment. So there are a few that have education departments and there are a few that do not. So that's why I just gently ask, 'cause I know not all of our CACs offer that just based on the number of people employed through their programs. But ours does, and we cover all of Northwest Louisiana.
Okay,
And we send out annual letters and gifts every year to our counselors to let them know. And we talk to the school boards because we have to be approved through the school boards.
Okay.
And then from there, the school board may approve, but then it's going to be up to the school as the individual to decide if they want to use our services.
So what I'm trying to see is currently being offered through you guys with DCFS, and this is virtual, online? Okay. Is your class also virtual?
We prefer and love face-to-face.
Okay.
And I know a lot of other schools and faculty and staff do enjoy the face-to-face more. And my only concern with online, we don't know how checked in they may be doing online courses. Not that it's
Yeah, I know.
bad, like it's very convenient and easy, and I'm sure some do, but that's always the concern. So we do enjoy the face-to-face.
I do understand that. I think it's a valid concern. So let me ask this question then to DCFS, because I'm just wondering if there could be a link added to your website to let people know that this is an option. Like they can do it online with you guys, or they can do it in person with one of the CACs that actually provide it. So when they click, they can see if that's what they prefer.
A question was raised as to whether or not this was part of.
Can you pull it in your mic?
A question was raised as to whether or not this was already part of like a previous law, that this specific training was to be conducted through the website, through DCFS. And so we would have to verify that, but it looks like Ms. Shelton.
Children's Code at Article 603.1, it is required that they do the online training. Teachers and early learning center employees do the online training through DCFS.
Okay.
So if we want, that's something we can look at,
Right.
if we want that training to be a possibility of approval by DCFS and in person. But right now, they should be doing both.
Yeah, and I
if they're
definitely don't
doing
want
with
to
you.
fight that because I do appreciate and love that if it's one program with the right information that we can keep accountability on updating it. But if there's also ways that we can support, if they needed a secondary for whatever reasons, we can also just be that, I guess, extra option if needed.
That'd be great. I think that's a good idea.
Train the trainer.
Yeah, train the trainer.
Okay. Glad that we're having this discussion. Okay, great information. Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment. As an attorney, there's nothing more frustrating to me than when I'm confronted with a factual situation. I can't find an answer in law. And I think you all recognize very early on, and having been presented with that same factual situation, that there was a gap in the law. So I appreciate what you, your task force, and your staff have done in plugging that gap. It certainly was a very worthwhile task for you to take on, and appreciate you for that.
Oh, thank you, my friend. I appreciate those comments, but people like you, right? A lot of my friends that I've served with in the legislature, who all have the same shared vision, makes it a little easier. And again, like you said, it's nothing more frustrating, especially when we think that we've crossed every T and dotted every I, and then we realize that we missed something. And then we just try to make sure we go back and correct it. So I'm glad to have partners like you guys to help us get this across the finish line. And I'm really appreciative also to the governor's office for helping us kind of shepherd this along with the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, because this really required all hands on deck. And again, it was so many, what I'm always amazed at, this started off with one question that I had to our ombudsman. Leaving, and I know exactly where I was. I was leaving a graduation, and someone had called me about a case, and I called her because I was like, I just don't understand why this is so complicated. I said, it seems very simple. And she said, there's many layers to this. And I said, well, I'm going to do a resolution. And she said, I think that'll be a great idea. And my question was just trying to look at the investigation. That was my initial question. And we ended up with all this other stuff that we didn't even know about. So again, I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Ashley, because you guys have spent numerous hours with us, with the staff, talking with non-public schools, all the individuals, all our stakeholders who had many, many questions and probably still do. But at the end of the day, we are moving forward, and we're going to keep moving forward because we are going to protect our kids at all costs. All right. Any additional questions or comments? And I don't have any more questions on the board. Okay. So at this time, we will begin to take public comments from the audience. And I do have some cards here from some individuals who would like to come. I have, no? At the end? We at the end. You and your beautiful wife? Oh, she just stepped out? Okay. Okay, well, we do have Casey Robery. Casey, come on up, Casey.
Good morning. My name is Casey Robery. I know that I spent some time last task force and testified about the case. I'll just kind of go briefly over the case because I see that there's some new faces. My name's Casey Robery. I am the mother of 2 young children who are currently 5 and 7 years old. Close to 3 years ago, my children disclosed that their father was sexually abusing them. I was able to get a temporary restraining order in sole custody, and investigation began. The Child Advocacy Center did forensically interview my children, where they both disclosed in detail abuse. DCFS was involved. We did go to court. That temporary restraining order and sole custody was removed. He made accusations that the kids were being coached, and we went back to regular visitation. Shortly after unsupervised visitation, they disclosed again, and I was advised by their pediatrician to bring them to the emergency room to do a SANE examination, which we did. Even though they were interviewed at the hospital again and disclosed again, my ex-husband filed for sole custody for our children due to that SANE exam. That was completed, again advised by the pediatrician, and I lost all custody of my children. And this was almost 3 years ago, and I have never regained custody of my children since then. And again, no concerns about me, literally, for bringing my children to the ER for a SANE exam. I have been under supervised visitation since then, where my children continue to exhibit sexualized behavior, masturbate, touch each other, make inappropriate, literally show us and demonstrate what their father continues to do to them. I know that one concern that the task force had last time I testified was that one of the current orders under the Judge Susan Thiel is that I cannot, and no one on my behalf that represent me, can make a false report to any reporting agencies. And so that, I know several people were very concerned about that. It's an attempt to really silence people and get people to not report. There has been, at this point, 4 or 5 investigations with DCFS. My children continue to describe abuse to people. I know that there's been at least 12 or 15 reports made to DCFS, and I have only made 1 of them. There have been reports by medical professionals, multiple therapists, directors of schools, teacher. This continues even though they're not in my custody. And so I believe the 3rd or 4th investigation over a year ago that opened, he claimed that I made a false report to DCFS and filed contempt charges against me. We did go to court. even though I testified that I did not make the report, did not ask anyone to make the report, the hearing officer, Corliss Smith, found me in contempt and recommended that I spend 2 days in parish jail.
You served time?
I did not. So when you go to hearing officer, it's a recommendation. You could either accept that recommendation or you can go to before the judge, usually 30 to 60 days later, for them to make a final order on that. And so I'll get to that. We never ended up going before the judge for this matter. And so that's kind of where we had.
You did not go before the judge?
Not yet. And so that's a great concern, right? We should never be told to not report. So so that's kind of where we were at when I testified in February. So I kind of want to update you guys on what's happened since then, because the situation has become dire, and I think that there is definitely some things that you guys need to work on to make sure that these things never happen. So since my last testimony, someone has come forward and signed an affidavit stating that my ex-husband was bragging that Casey can't touch me, I have connections, and know the judge. So we did file a recusal for our current judge. She denied that. We uncovered lots of information of connections that my ex-husband has with the judge. His significant other is friends with the judge. Her ex-husband have donated 6 figures to her campaigns. She has been in the news saying that they were dear friends and that they really wanted her to be a judge. So since then, our family court judge has been recused from our case. Another family court judge, the only other one, I'm in the 15th JDC, the Lafayette Parish, was assigned, and he had to self-recuse himself because of her inappropriate behavior of speaking about our case, which is against the Judicial Code of Conduct. So she continues to have very inappropriate behavior. We have filed judicial complaints against her. So again, I have no custody of my children because I brought them to the ER for a state examination.
The judge, I want to make sure I'm clear on that. So the judge is making these comments?
So she was talking to the other family court judge that was not assigned to the case. She has been discussing the case in detail with the other family court judge, which is against the Judicial Code of Conduct. So the only other family court judge in the 15th JDC. You guys have
reported that?
We've reported her relationships.
Okay.
Connections.
And there's been no action?
We filed a judicial complaint, which takes quite some time.
How long ago was that? And I'm asking you these series of questions because I've heard this multiple times. And it's not just in this court. It's seemingly across the state in pockets. And it may be more pronounced than we know, but I'm just speaking from cases that we begin to hear more of this happening. And I'm not going to start calling parishes, but it's not just in Lafayette. So my concern, because there is one here in EBR, that I actually have sent a letter to the Judicial Review Panel as well, and the Supreme Court, for them to begin to evaluate and take a look at this, because this is very problematic if this is happening. I also heard that there was another parish, not Lafayette, where parents are being almost threatened if they say anything. And so this is concerning to me if this is really a bigger problem than just these cases that we've heard, like your case, the case I know about here in Baton Rouge, and then another case in another parish.
So I do think, and I'm not the person to give opinions on what should happen, definitely. But
No,
I
I
do
know
see
you have to be
other
very careful.
issues.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see issues with just the process of filing a judicial complaint. That judge is still assigned to your case. So if you think that there's some bias or some connection and you publicly call them out and file a complaint, what do you think is going to happen to you? Do you think that judge will ever rule in your favor? I mean, that's definitely an issue. And I believe that I don't know exactly how long it takes. I guess it depends on how many complaints that they have, but I've heard that it's a 6 to 12 month process. 6 to 12 months? Correct. But there is obviously, she had to recuse herself. There was definitely a connection. There was definitely a bias. I mean, every single motion that
So
was
it's a new
submitted to
judge
the court.
assigned?
So again, that the other family court judge had to self-recuse himself. And so it was just assigned to a different division. He's not a family court judge. So we have not gone before him, which will be quite some time, which is another issue right now. We're starting over with another judge. More professionals coming in, having to schedule a full custody trial again. I mean, we're looking into 2026 before there could possibly be another trial and resolution. And you can't even begin to imagine the cost. I mean, I could look at another 6 figures for another trial when I've already spent close to $400,000 right now in legal fees, attorney fees, visitation reports, transcripts, filing motions. We're talking about $500,000. So thankfully she was recused, and now we're going to have to go through the process of another trial. But since then, my testimony as well, which is very concerning, is that there was another report that was made to DCFS. My ex-husband has again alleged that I made another report, which I have not. I have under oath testified that I have not filed a report. I do not know who made a report, and I did not ask anyone to make a report. And he filed another contempt motion against me, which I think is in your packets. So another contempt going before the same hearing officer, Corliss Smith, who's already found me in contempt, and they're asking for my imprisonment. I'm very concerned about the outcome, especially since what's happened in the past. So you could even see on the contempt, there was an order for any party acting or claiming to act on my behalf from filing fraudulent or false reports, even though I testified last contempt that I did not make a report. She still found me in contempt.
So that I'm clear, which one is that going to be the one on top?
Yes,
with
ma'am.
The March 20th date?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let me tell you, I know that we cannot go into a lot of details because this is still pending litigation, but this is very, very, very concerning. I am extremely concerned.
So what you were saying about people trying to be silenced, this is how you silence people.
Yeah. That and with the cost.
In fact, that last hearing, I said I did not make a false report, and a hearing officer still found me in contempt and recommended that I spend 2 days in parish jail?
And see, this is part of what I don't understand this.
It doesn't
this
make
process,
sense.
like how this process works. But I do have a problem with it. I have a problem.
There's
with
no
this.
accountability, correct. So it is what it is. We're going to court actually in a couple days, so I'm looking forward to testifying and giving y'all an update at the
When do
next
you go to
meeting
court?
in a couple days, on the 25th. So that brings to another report to DCFS. There was another report that was filed, another investigation that was opened, and a 5th close of an invalid case of abuse. So I'd like to kind of go over some of the problems within DCFS and some of the failures that I have seen now for almost 3 years. So my ex-husband has really recently testified in a deposition, bragging, which I believe that y'all have his deposition, recently bragging that there was another invalid case of abuse. He made statements to the fact that he is sleeping in the bed with our young children in his underwear, and that he has told the department on multiple occasions that that is occurring, and they don't find that problematic.
How old are your daughters?
They just turned 5 and 7 years old. The DCFS caseworker, even though I've given a plethora of information, they said that the case was invalid due to no new evidence. You can see the deposition that was provided from the visitation center, where my kids continue to complain constantly of vaginal burning, itching, and scratching, touching each other, and reports of abuse. I know that last time I testified to them being hysterical and physically trying to harm the supervisors when they leave me. None of this is normal behavior. This is not normal.
Let me do this, because this right here always concerns me. I'm going to ask Christine Peckett, as our chief attorney, how much of this information can we have disclosed publicly? And what do we need to be careful of? Because I don't want to ever put your case in jeopardy.
And so I do want to say that there's no gag order on this. This is all what I'm saying, and all these court documents,
Okay.
it's public knowledge.
Okay.
You can go online and search this. So
Okay.
I am not concerned about anything being shared. It's all public knowledge.
But let me just clarify, because I do want to be very careful about that. I don't want to jeopardize the case. I don't want to put any of us, I guess, at any liability at some point, and I'm not even sure about that. But just clarify, please.
Senator Barrow, I think consistently over the years that Ms. Robery has been at the committee's position has always been to protect the children and protect the interest of the children, and the children do have a privacy right here. And so while we are always appreciative of her testimony, the details, the graphic details and the information, since we are not triers of fact, we do not want that information disclosed to protect the children based on the information that you all are getting here in the committee. So I don't think you have liability, any liability, but I think that's the consistent position of the legislature, which is why we've encouraged Ms. Robery to meet with the department in a private setting to have these conversations frankly.
So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you, Ms. Robery, just to point out what you considered the failed processes.
Correct.
We have the information. So
Correct.
I don't want to go through like any of the details of like what you have given to us, because everybody has, you've made this available to everybody and they can go and read it.
Correct.
But if you would just highlight.
Okay, so the department has said that there was no new evidence, which clearly there is new evidence and new visitation reports of disclosures. You can also see in there the visitation reports and things that are highlighted. The things that my children disclose is not normal behaviors for children. It all clearly indicates child sexual abuse. They have also said that they had contacted everyone with the information, which is not truthful. They couldn't even remember everybody that they were supposed to contact. I asked about a forensic interview being done. I mean, that's clearly, even in their own policies, your own policy, Policy 4-14 of the Sexual Abuse Investigation Preparedness. It literally reads, in all reports of sexual abuse or juvenile sex trafficking and is alleged, forensic interviews with the alleged child or children victims shall be coordinated with local law enforcement and the Child Advocacy Center. They were never even forensically interviewed. The caseworker told me that they went out to the school and asked questions and nothing was said, so an interview did not need to take place. DCFS is violating their own rules. But the most egregious part of everything is the fact that DCFS came out to my home the first day in the investigation and then went to my ex-husband's directly after. He's testified that the first day in the investigation, the caseworker and the supervisor went out to his house before my children were questioned forensically without looking at a single documentation, without calling a single person to question. The caseworker advised him to, quote, put his foot down as long as he allows me access to the children, either through visitation or phone calls, that I will continue making false allegations against him. She assumed without looking at a single piece of evidence that it was false. And this is the people that determine an invalid or valid case. Not only that, but she advised him to violate court orders. Since then, my ex-husband has not only allowed me no visitation with my children or phone calls, I have not had a visit with my children in 6 months. And he has not allowed me, against court orders, to talk to my children for 5 months. That's what the DCFS caseworker advised him to do.
Ms. Robery, that is,
And you can see this in the deposition from my ex-husband. It's tabbed if you would like to read it.
and I will do that. I'm gonna make sure I do that because that is troublesome. It's even more troublesome if a caseworker has done that, and so.
Caseworker, but her supervisor was present during that time. The caseworker is Leona Arsenault and the supervisor, Crystal Bryson.
And you know, those are very strong words that you've given here today. And I'm assuming that you can actually substantiate that, like you can actually
Absolutely.
prove.
Read the deposition. He even says who it was.
So I'm not, I don't know if the department wants to say anything because this is an ongoing situation, but this is problematic. And I would hope, though, that we don't have caseworkers that are really doing that. You go back to court on the 25th?
That's just for contempt. This is not for custody. We will have no custody
So
trial
no
at
one
least
is
till
ensured that you
2026.
could still talk to your children?
No.
Why is that?
We've had no judge. When there's a recusal that's pending, you can't go before them for anything. And then another judge was recused and another one was appointed. So
And that's going to take 6 to 12 months, you're saying, probably.
there's contempt right now, charges for the no phone calls or visitation. But again, that's many, many months before we go before the judge, even for contempt, not even for custody trial. So in the meantime, my children are still with the perpetrator, still being abused. And the agencies that are supposed to protect our children, I mean, they're advising him to violate court orders. They're assuming that it's false and telling him to have no contact with me.
Okay.
So what do protective mothers like me do? Where do I go for assistance? Where do I go for help? When the agencies that are supposed to protect my children are failing my children. Not only failing them, but making the situation worse.
Well, I tell you this, we're going to get to the bottom of it.
I would like to hope so. I know that we've been trying for several months to meet.
Yes,
And that has
now,
not happened.
yeah.
So it shows great
No.
concern at the
We have
leadership layers.
met, and I know under Secretary Matlock, he actually had required another investigation to be done. And
That's the one I'm talking about.
okay, and I had not talked with him before he transitioned away, right? He's no longer the secretary. So we did talk, and he did order another investigation. So that is what you're speaking to now. But again, there are many broken pieces to this whole situation. This could be one aspect of it. Certainly the judicial system is another part of it. And everybody that's connected in that whole web look like we have a problem. And so I cannot tell you that I know the absolute answer, but what I will tell you is that we're going to get to the bottom of it, because I don't think you are an isolated incident or this is an isolated situation. Unfortunately, it is happening across the state in different areas or in different ways where individuals are being almost sequestered to not being able to speak or being silenced or not being able to be a voice for their children, especially if there seemingly is relationship between the individual and someone in the judicial system. And maybe I should say that because maybe I could be absolutely wrong, but there's something happening here that is problematic. And on my sheet, on my paper, when I talk about the things that we are going to go through going forward, that we're going to have particular meetings to actually look at those processes. The judicial system is one of them, because again, this has not been the only time I've heard this situation. I'm very much aware of one here in Baton Rouge and another one in another parish, and then you guys are in Lafayette. So again, these are seemingly not just isolated incidents. It's just that you guys have been able to press forward to continue to be a voice and continue to keep screaming until it's addressed. So I will assure you, and you know that I'm been keeping my word. Although we have a lot going on, I will continue to keep fighting and continue to keep asking the questions. I'm waiting to hear back from the Supreme Court here on my letter to them to see what is happening with that case in that situation. And we will continue to keep fighting to see where there's a breakdown with how this whole process is working and why is it happening. So thank you for the update. I appreciate it. You made this very clear. I think whatever we don't, and I think that whatever questions that we may have, I think maybe in these pages.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Last, I think, I don't think I have any more cards. We have Master Sergeant Williams and Dr. Jenna. If y'all would come up, please. Where is he?
So Jenna worked last night, and she's tired. So I'm gonna do most of the speaking tonight.
Well, thank y'all both for being here.
So again, Senator Barrow, Task Force, we appreciate you guys. We appreciate having us up and allowing us to speak again. Good morning, everyone. I want to start off by saying we did it. We all did it. We all did it together. We came here today as cheerleaders for Act 409, also known as Charlie's Law, because this law is not just words on paper. It's a shield for Louisiana's children. Senator Barrow, when we sat up here, I think it was in April, and we had a draft for the bill, you said that we were on step 1 and that we got about 7 steps to go. You conveniently left out that there was overtime and there's an 8th and a 9th step. But we will continue to show up. We will continue to fight, and we'll continue to push child protection for every kid here in Louisiana. So I do want to talk about some things that we've heard over the last few months. So we've heard some folks say that what happened in our case was a one-off. I wish they were right. But unfortunately, we aren't the only family that came forward and gave input for this large, expansive law. And the hard truth is that 16% of the total call volume to DCFS for child-on-child sexual assaults, or just assaults, went uninvestigated. That means that even if one of those parents wanted to stand up, wanted to report, wanted justice, wanted accountability, until Charlie's Law was passed, the system was stacked against them. My family fought for 8 long months before we stumbled before this very committee. We found out about it, I think, 2 or 3 days before, and we said, well, we don't have anything to lose. Then we had to find the courage to open up and tell our story over and over and over again. And that's the only reason this conversation started and change started to happen. So please don't tell me that my incident was a one-off. I'm sure it's not. I know it's not. Other thing that's been happening, we can't lose sight of the entirety of Charlie's Law. It's not just about licensing and ratios. This bill is 32 pages long, and I think for ratios and licensure covers maybe 4 pages of it. I just want to reiterate, that the DOE, we can't lose sight of the entirety of Charlie's Law. It's not just about licensing ratios. It's about prevention, education, transparency, and accountability. The Department of Education, and again, in December, you probably wouldn't hear me say this, but and DCFS, instead of digging their heels in, they've stepped forward as vital backstops to protect Louisiana's children, and for that, we are grateful. Change is never easy, but our children are priceless. I would like to recognize everyone behind the scenes, plugging away every single day for the last few weeks to make this implementation of the new law happen. I want to recognize the unsung heroes that have sacrificed time away from their family, friends, their hobbies, things they love to do in order to make this happen. And we're forever grateful and appreciative. I've spoken to Ashley a few times, and I know how busy she is. I know how busy her team is. And I don't think that we need to recognize that there's a lot of people behind the scenes. This law was passed, and they're making it happen. And that's an amazing thing. We saw a few weeks ago the Charlie's Law Forum that's going out to all the schools, and I think that was the realization that it started to hit me that this is really happening. Change is happening. When we first came, we challenged you. We said we didn't want your thoughts and prayers, and you guys delivered. You guys made this happen. So it's more than just numbers. Some folks think that ratios are a nuisance. They're not. The minimum safety standards, and frankly, other states are doing it a little better. But let's look at Mississippi, for example. Their 4-year-old program is a 1 to 10. Under Charlie's Law, it's 1 to 15 for the same age, which isn't unreasonable. This isn't just about safety. Ratios affect the learning environment as well. If you look at Mississippi again, the Mississippi Miracle, they passed it after their 2013 Literacy-Based Promotion Act. And they took that challenge on, and they did something amazing. Ratios matter, not just for safety, but for everything. But Senator Barrow, we understand we're not done. Charlie's Law was just a start. Senator Barrow, we understand that your strategic vision, we understand your strategic vision, and we understand that Charlie's Law isn't perfect, but it's just that, it's just a start. We're excited about your phased approach and to bring public schools and Montessori schools under the same licensure as everybody else. This is something that me and Jana look forward to working with you, to working with this task force, working with the Department of Education and the legislator to ensure that all kids going forward will be more protected than they were last May when they got out of school. I want to highlight a few other things that this law does. On parental notification, closing the shocking gap. One part of the law that isn't getting enough attention is the requirement to inform parents if their child was abused. That came from another family's experience. Think about that. How shocked would you be to learn that your child was abused, the perpetrator was reported, the investigation was substantiated, and no one ever told you about it? How can you get your child help if you don't know that they've been hurt? Incredibly, until Charlie's Law is passed in 2025, that's now a requirement. They must notify the parents. Another change, before this law, a private school could keep all your money, tuition, summer camp fees, even deposits for the next year after your child was sexually assaulted at school. Imagine losing thousands of dollars on top of everything else. That makes it easier to disbelieve your kid, right? It's hard to believe these kids, and especially when there's a lot of money involved, it's hard to pull your kid out and start over and find a new school. No more falling through the cracks. Finally, Charlie's Law names who's responsible for investigating child-on-child sexual assaults outside of the home and triggers an immediate investigation within 48 hours. Before this law, too many children fell through the crack. Again, 16% of kids, 16%, including my 3-year-old daughter. She was failed, and my family had to pick up the pieces, and we never want another parent to go through what we went through. And endure what we've endured over the last year and a half. So this task force, this legislator, this law, they represent more than policy. They represent protection, accountability, and hope. So today, I'm not just here to say thank you. I'm here to say let's keep going. Let's keep closing the gaps. Let's make Louisiana the safest place for kids in America to grow up, because our kids deserve nothing less. So thank you again, and thank you guys. That was hard. I've held it together this whole time.
Oh, and I had a couple notes, by the way. I didn't mention it. I need a lot more caffeine right now.
So as far as just food for thought, I was kind of paying attention when it was within the school. How did the investigation start? Because I thought you said local law enforcement and then they clue you in. I thought it went straight to you guys, but I could have been half-see paying attention.
Straight to us.
It does, okay, because, okay, I did not hear you correctly. And then another thing is timing. At least I don't know if the ages are important as far as a child advocacy center. Because when we first went to the emergency room, they said the typical follow-up in New Orleans was 2 weeks, which for a 3-year-old is kind of an eternity. So maybe just a consideration to maybe shorten that. Because, you know, we advocated for our daughter and really pushed for a week. But if they say standard is 2 weeks and someone doesn't know any better and they just accept it for what it is, just food for thought, something to think about, maybe something to improve upon. And then Dr. Birch, okay, I haven't, new face, sorry. So just another thing that we encountered, because I saw, I heard you were coming from a psychology background. And the one other thing that was a big barrier with us is having, I hate seeing someone on call, but I know at least, because I work at a level 1 trauma center, so if something traumatic happens, whether it's a gunshot victim or a car accident, we can immediately trigger in the hospital mental health for them so they can have assistance there. But for our daughter, she was so young, and there wasn't really anyone readily available as standby. So like the week that followed was awful, and it's just like burned into my mind. But there was no one that really specialized for her age. So let's say 6 and under, where like they're not great at communicating their feelings. Is there anyone that's really available for them right away to pick up the pieces when it's bad?
This one here. Yeah, that 0 to 6. So our agency starts at 5, which, but we do have a crisis team that specifically is responsive, like in that immediate for support for families, how to talk about this. The Child Advocacy Center is often that, but if given that you faced wait times, that is also, you're right, for a 3-year-old.
It's crushingly long, yeah.
A long period of time. I know with DCFS, you guys have some relationship too with like Tulane's like parent educate TPEP and TCAT. And so with a lot of specialization in infant mental health, and I don't know if those resources are available during the investigative period or what that looks like, but also if there wasn't an investigation, that also may be a period of, you know, support. I don't know how quickly families get linked with those services.
Just a
but
food
yeah,
for thought,
it's a
because
really-
that's
it's a
something, because
substantial
like,
need.
let's be realistic, there's mental health crisis
Yeah.
across the board, regardless of
super long waiting
age.
lists and,
Yes,
like, yes.
Just,
Yeah, like at Children's Hospital in New Orleans, they do have a provider that specializes in young children.
Yeah.
And when we called, it was 18 months.
Which in the life of a young child is
Right.
an eternity.
yes.
Yeah.
We do have
Yes, like
a
what.
program with Tulane that you're
Right.
talking about with Dr.
Correct,
Zena.
but one of the things that she brought up is if there's not an active investigation, would those families,
Those
be
resources aren't
referred? And
available.
so, often some of the cases that Charlie Zena sees, especially with TCAT, are cases that we were involved with. And that was, again, like kind of the gap that we identified, is that nobody was involved in your case. So there was no one to advocate, like you all obviously are amazing advocates, but you didn't have a state agency behind you to advocate for further resources. And so, and then one more thing to clarify is you are correct, you did hear correctly, that the school incidents are reported to law enforcement. And then the law enforcement agency does report to us on anything that is mandated in the law, which is pretty comprehensive for any
Okay.
type of, so, but we would investigate those. So I think that's the important thing to know, that we would investigate. And law enforcement, of course, would investigate anything that was a criminal nature as well.
Okay, so if it was a parent, because when I'm reflecting on the sheet that's getting sent out right now, that's talking about ratios and reporting. It's mainly regarding the ratios, but nowhere in there does it say anything. If it was something, whether it's physical or sexual assault within a school, it didn't say, I think in that form, who to call. So it would, from my understanding right now, they would call their local law enforcement and then they would clue you in. They wouldn't immediately trigger to you guys.
Well, I think
is
with the
what I'm trying-
mandatory reporter, they have to
they
report
have
to
to-
you guys. Correct.
to law enforcement and us within.
And regardless, like if we received a type of report that would be accepted for investigation to our intake, then we would take the appropriate, process. We would investigate, and then we would refer to law enforcement if that had not been done. Of course, we want everyone to know who they should report to, and so if there's information out there that's not clear, we want to make sure that that is more clear. But if we received that call through intake, then we would follow the appropriate steps and procedures to investigate that and make sure there was a law enforcement notification within our time frame that is specified by the law. The other thing, just one more thing to kind of clarify, when we talk about the 16%, that number could go up, that number could go down, because we looked at a very small sample size of 100 cases, and of those 100 cases, 16 would have been accepted for investigation. And so, it could be that we, at the end of this year, have data that says 25% of cases would have been accepted. It could be that it's 5%, but we are tracking that, and we'll be able to give a very accurate number at the end of this tracking period. However, as you know, even one child is too many.
Right.
So really, it doesn't matter if it's 16% or 1%. Just wanted to clarify some of that information, but we will track that, and we'll be able to give that
We
number for
appreciate
y'all.
it. Again, I just, because I know you're saying a mandatory reporter, but as parents, when you're trying to figure out who do I call, who do I reach out to, that was my concern. It wouldn't be a mandatory reporter because obviously they're educated and they know. It would be the person who's not used to this world and is completely uninformed of what they should do. That's where I was trying to.
Yeah, and if they call us, then
know.
we're going to make sure the appropriate people are involved. So that's just, I think, really important for everyone to know. Even if they call and they're putting in a report through the mandatory reporter portal, it should be a call. This should be a phone call when people are calling to report this type of abuse or neglect. It should be a call, but if they do report it, then we would, do our due diligence to make sure the appropriate people were involved.
So one of the things that as I'm listening to this conversation that I'm thinking about is probably how OTS can help. I believe there can be some symmetry with them in terms of what that looks like. But I'm also thinking about you guys putting together, and I don't, maybe it already exists, but when something happens, because people don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what to ask for, and a lot of times things are not clear, or it's not readily accessible, or you can't put your hands on it, you can't find it. Even if you Google it, it may not really even come up. Do y'all make something available in terms of resource? If you have encountered abuse, this is what you should do. Does that exist?
So we do have some information on our brochure, which is currently on our website, but will be, I was told, available in print by the end of next week. So we did get a timeline for that. So both of those, online portal and then also through the printed brochure, would have that information. But again, anyone that calls into to the hotline to report abuse or neglect, that information will be taken by our intake. So it doesn't matter if you're a mandatory reporter or not. If you call into that number to report abuse or neglect, then that call will be received and that information will be taken, and then it will be handled, basically the appropriate, should be handled the appropriate way, following that way.
Dr. Conrad, after the meeting today, I want you to get with either Ms. Heineman or with Ms. Dr. Hook. I am going, because this is something I should have been done, I want to come see that whole process at work, because there are some things for me that are not real clear that I need to make sure I understand how it works, that reporting process, what happens next, because at the end of the day, while we have definitely made some great strides, I want to make sure that they're not the little things that we are missing that causes another gap. And to me, as I listen to this, I feel like there's something missing, but I don't know what it is. And maybe it's because I don't understand. Hold up. Ms. Hadley?
Yes, so there's twofold to all the statements. And it brought up another question about the mandated reporter trainings. Do they localize it to the region that they're doing the training on, or is it just a generic, broad mandated reporter type training?
It's one training, so it's a broad training.
Okay, so our Aptitude Center, we have created magnets that we also pass out to each parish that we do the mandated reporter training, to the specific local numbers and agencies to call. And we can provide that template of that to make sure that each school has that magnet on their filing cabinet or fridge or wherever, where it has those local agencies to contact immediately. And that was one of the things that we appreciated doing the mandated reporter training, because we will localize it to where it's efficient for them in their parish, in their region, to know exactly who to call. And I don't know if that would be something to consider doing, since it's required by the Children's Code of Law to go through DCFS, if there's a way that we can localize it and also provide those local agency contact numbers, whether that's sheriff's office, state police, police departments, and then the local DCFS contact emergency number, having all that accessible to
Well,
them.
I guess when we talk about the emergency number, like if you're making a report, it is the same number. So it's an 800 number for
yes.
DCFS, yes.
Yes.
And then, there could be a local office number. There is a local office number that people can call when the system is down. And so making sure that everyone that needs that has that available is a process that we do have in place, because sometimes that does happen. Like we have to do a system update, or there will be a reason why our hotline is not functioning. And so we do have a kind of, I guess, an emergency process in place where all of the hospitals, law enforcement, they're notified that, hey, right now our system is down. We need your assistance in making sure that these calls are getting to us and to our local office.
Great. And then the second statement question was, with being the awareness of children younger than 6 being interviewed, was there a reason they said 2 weeks out for a forensic interview?
They
No.
said that was just standard.
I think it was
Which I
what
don't
was
know where
available.
that standard comes from. That's not a standard that we adhere to. I don't know if that was just something that they say to blanket that. I'm not sure. And I can't speak for that parish specifically, but I do want you to know that we advocate immensely for those younger ages to be forensically interviewed as soon as possible. And that might be something to consider asking on local levels of CACs what their processes may be like, if there's
wait times.
wait times, because it differs in parishes, and it also differs just based on how many people are employed at that CAC. But definitely was a concerning statement to hear, and I can only imagine how concerning it may have felt for you guys as well.
Would have to kind of start, because I know from a local standpoint, yes, but it also goes back to the hospitals, right? So we went to Children's just because I knew that they had a child advocacy center, and when we were getting discharged with your AVS, your after visit summary, that was part of it. So I don't know who really determines because that's not really in the world of healthcare that I'm in.
Right.
But that's just what they told me. Hey, usually, if you get discharged within a week, go see a cardiologist. Within so much time, go see so and so. So they said, okay, well, after this incident, typically within 2 weeks, we're gonna at 2 weeks we'll do an interview.
Right,
at
and I
the
know that
Audrey Hepburn Center.
CAC is hospital-based in New Orleans.
Yes, so it's very close to Children's Hospital. It's around the corner in a little cottage, and it doesn't look like a hospital, and so it's not so scary to little kids, which is fantastic. It's a great facility. But I don't know if that information maybe would have to get disseminated from the emergency room that would give that referral out. Again, just food for thought.
No, I love it, yeah.
I think, because there's a lot of stuff in the hospitals oh, this is how we've always done it, and you just kind of keep doing it that way. I don't know if we were just, I can't speak to a whole bunch of people hey, how's your experience down at the CAC?
Right.
So yeah.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's helpful, and it's something I can take
Hold
back.
up. I'm sorry. Dr. Birch.
Yes. No, I was just going to say, as a member of the multidisciplinary team, something I can take back, just so that as they're examining their own policies and procedures, that can just be elevated onto their radar.
Oh, you're in their MDT?
I'm part of
perfect.
the mental health arm of the MDT, so they refer to us, yeah. So I can definitely take that back, which is super helpful, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shelton.
Yes, just for DCFS. For the alternative response program for the child-on-child sexual abuse, will they be providing resources to those families? That was part of the problem here. is
Yes,
to
we are
find
supposed to be
resources.
making appropriate referrals for resources.
Okay.
Now, we can't control the wait time for some of those resources, and so that is a bigger issue that I think we all need to discuss, because there is not, like we were just talking about, enough availability for behavioral health services. Even in some cases, not even enough availability for primary care providers in some regions of the state.
I can just see as a parent, though, I don't know where to go. Where can I take my kid? What can I do? So I just want to I know for investigations, you guys will do that, but that's part of, and you're going to give us the policy and stuff, but I wanted to make sure.
And just a question on, so when you guys offer the referrals, is that funded through DCFS, or do the parents have to provide insurance? If they don't have the means to pay, who pays for it?
That's an excellent question. Typically, the way that would work is that if the child is not in our custody, then the parent would have the obligation to cover the expenses of those costs. And so that is a very good thing to bring up. We do have some partnerships with community providers that are able to provide services on a more, scaled down cost. But I think that's another issue we would probably need to explore.
Yeah, is that something that Medicaid, Medicare, anything would cover?
Medicaid does cover many of the services, especially for therapy, like therapeutic services. The service array is pretty large. Finding a provider that takes the patients and it's not a long wait list, sometimes that can be difficult depending on the region of the state that you're in. But that is when families need to have the information given to them that we can work with the MCO if they are a Medicaid enrolled client, and the MCO they are responsible for finding someone in that service network to provide those services to the family and to the child, whether or not they're in DCFS custody or whether or not they are a member of the general community.
Yeah, I just think that's going to be a major hurdle for a lot of families. So
That is a
hopefully,
big concern.
that's something that that this task force could also look at is when an investigation is accepted, whether it's for anything that they have resources, that hopefully isn't a financial burden, because in our experience, even with insurance, finding a provider that dealt with this age group, that accepted our insurance, that didn't have an 18-month wait list, we ended up paying out of pocket for everything, essentially.
That's a big concern. Amanda, I see you writing that down. Or I see you writing. Yes. Look, so I'm assuming that you're taking notes on some of this, because we already had like some high surface issues that we know that we needed to cover going forward in these upcoming months for next session that we wanted to try to address to bridge the gap in. But that's another one. And I don't know everything that you guys have went through, and but I've heard your testimony, and I can only imagine. And so I know how difficult it was for you guys, how more difficult it may be for others who did not have the intestinal fortitude, the will to continue, just kind of got beat down, and God only knows what may have happened to them in the process and the child. But I don't want, I'm going to do everything I can, humanly possible, to make sure that it doesn't happen to anybody else. I do want to say, though, I am sorry that we failed, you guys. As Tony said, we try very hard to make sure that we get it right. We try to make sure that we don't have gaps in law. And even when I talked to many of my colleagues, they did not believe me when I told them that we had that many facilities that were unlicensed. One of them actually said, I just thought you didn't really understand. I didn't know, didn't realize that, because I know that we are not doing that. And so I'm happy that we are working towards the progress of making it better. But before I leave this Capitol, I am going to do everything humanly possible where we still have gaps as it relates to even the school board, like that whole process, what that looks like, because we had a lot of questions about that in terms of the training, how the mandatory training is happening, who's getting it, how that's being reported, the judges, law enforcement we have here in terms of ensuring that all law enforcement has the same information. It's all being given out and being recorded the same way. We know that some do better than others. The CACs is another group that we have here, and I just added hospitals. And I'm sure that we still have another big bucket that we are missing. But we're going to do in the next 2 years to make sure that all those gaps that we did not realize that we had are filled, so that 16%, it could be lower, it could be higher. I want it to be 0. Okay, sorry.
We appreciate you. And, you know, our situation was dark, but the amount of good that is coming out of it, I think, is tremendous. And it's the light, you know, the shining light in our situation that keeps Jana and I going. And again, without you, Senator Barrow, without you guys on this task force, you know, you took our issue serious, and I know we try to get it right, but we're doing something now. It's like things are happening, change is happening, people are taking this serious. I mean, our bill was supported by both sides of the aisle.
Yes, it was.
You know, so this is an issue that matters to Louisiana. It matters. It doesn't matter about your political party, but
That's right.
It's an amazing thing to see, and it's an amazing thing to be a part of, and we appreciate you guys.
Not one no vote. Not one no vote. That doesn't happen too often here. And even with the fiscal impact, I can tell you there were many hours that were spent to work towards addressing that, to make sure that we could add the money that was necessary to get it done across the aisles on both sides. Everybody saw it. Doesn't matter what party, what part of the state. Everybody understood it, and everybody wanted to make sure that we got this right. But again, I just think about when we first met you and hearing your background, coming from fighting for this country across seas, and then having to deal with that, and you being in the medical field, you would have to almost question, say, God, why us? I mean, you have done everything perfectly right, but oftentimes some things don't make sense. And we have to ask why. But because of you guys, I believe that multiple children are going to be saved and will not go through that heartache, and multiple families will be saved. So, again, I just want to say thank you. And of all of the legislation I've ever done, this is the one that I think will be the one that will have the greatest impact on my life. And I know I've done a lot of great things. But this is the one that when I give my speech that I'm going to talk about, because I know that it's going to make a difference. And I'm going to tell you, I tell my colleagues, I say, y'all think I'm going away, but I'm not. I would come down here and testify at any moment if I see things going awry, or if you try to undo what I've done. Okay, Dr. Birch.
I was just going to say, from a funding perspective, there are advocacy opportunities within like victims of crime assistance, and really supporting like some of the efforts around.
How do we make sure we connect all of, see, that for me is the biggest problem. It's like they don't connect, and hopefully, I'm hoping that OTS help us with all the technology. That baffles me, like why we can't get this done more seamlessly.
The VOCA funding and a lot of that advocacy is at the federal level, but even like within the state of Louisiana, LDH is working with LSU Health Sciences Center to increase the proliferation of Medicaid providers who are trained in evidence-based interventions, specifically for trauma, for early childhood, for problematic sexual behavior, all of those things. And so, but I think one of the challenges is there's continued advocacy efforts to increase the rates that providers are reimbursed to deliver those evidence-based interventions, because they take more time, they take more personnel resources. And so I think just kind of from like additional, as we look at resources for intervention and treatment that kind of come on that back end, there are advocacy efforts and things that, we can continue to push for.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You went away.
For them, and so I was going to wait until we were all done.
Okay. Yeah. Who's it for?
DCFS.
Oh, you can ask it.
Okay.
we are about to wrap up.
Yeah, I figured. Again, y'all did a great job.
Thank you.
So I know it's been hard. And I will just say, as someone that is a survivor, like having my parents fight for me is the reason that I'm here today. So I just, in the long term, like, holistic view of this, y'all are doing a great job. My question for DCFS about the substantiated and unsubstantiated, the letters, has that been implemented?
Yes, the letters have been implemented.
All right, that's it. No question.
Thank you guys again. We appreciate everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your courage and your tenacity and not giving up. I say a prayer for Charlie often. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, we are coming to the end of this task force meeting. And so here are some of the things that I have. It seems like we may have a lot of time, but we really don't. Session is going to start a little earlier next year because it is a even number year, which is a regular session. So we start in March. Bills have to be filed in February. So we have to have the conclusion of what we are going to do. I'm looking at staff over there because they are the ones that have to put this together. Really, we need to kind of have all this finalized in terms of what we are going to propose for next year by January, by the end of January. So I am planning to have meetings in September, October, November, no meetings in December, and our final meeting will be in January. If it becomes that we need to have more meetings or we need to address something that we didn't get a chance to do in the interim, we may have to add an additional meeting. At this time, I don't feel like we need to have subcommittees, but if that's something you guys would like to discuss, I'm open to that right now, to take on some of the items. And so earlier, I mentioned some of the what I feel are continued gaps. There are maybe areas that there's some gray components of that I'm not clear on. And seem like that we have a lot of questions about. So the school is one, and I have it listed here as it relates to school board association, superintendents association, and representatives from non-public schools, that whole process. I also have, and we just heard regarding the judges, that is a big concern. We actually have representation here with the judges, and we have actually built our meetings to try to accommodate them being able to attend, which they said Wednesdays, if I remember correctly, were the best days, right? So that's another concern. Law enforcement, and this came up during our last series of meetings where there seemed to be some level of inconsistency as it relates to how reporting was done, who was doing the reporting, what happened after reports were done, how was that information communicated, especially with DCFS, et cetera. So that's another group. And then we have CACs. We just heard right here from Ms. Hadley in terms of what some offer, what some don't, built upon their capacity, et cetera. And how do we bring all these groups together, right? So what I plan to do is actually have, and then, hospitals is what I just added. Because I don't know, and I like to know what happens when an individual shows up at the hospital. We know that we don't have enough SANE nurses. That's a whole nother component, right? What information, what resources, what are parents given or individuals that show up, what happens? And if there continuity and consistency in that process. So what I plan to do is all these buckets that I just called groups is have committee hearings that is specialized, tailored to that particular group. So that we can have representatives all across the board from those entities to be here to be able to answer questions, provide the level of information that we don't have. I've already received some information about what the process looks like now. so that, and we'll get that information to you so we'll know where the gaps are. The next meeting date that I'm looking at, which is going to be a little later in the month of September, and it's really primarily because of my schedule and because of a specialized individual that we are having to come in, is September 26th, which is a Friday. I'm hoping that all of you can make it on that date. I want you to take a look at your schedule. I want you to let me know if Wednesdays work well for you, because all of you are here. I'm really going to lean into my judges because none of them showed up today, and we don't know, what was going on. Maybe they had something going on, but I know that we made Wednesday's schedule to accommodate their schedule, and so I'm expecting someone to be present from that particular branch of government. I am expecting them to be here, and so I'm hoping that somebody that is on the judicial level is watching, because there's a lot of things happening that's giving me a lot of pause and concern as it relates to this branch of government, and we need to hear from them. And so being absent is not going to be a choice. I'll leave it at that. And then so from that, y'all let me know if Wednesdays work. There's another day, but the first or the next meeting is going to be on the 26th at 10 o'clock. 10 still works for everybody? Okay.
I know I have a class that I'm in that week, but I can figure out.
Okay. So our next meeting will be September 26th at 10 a.m. Does Wednesday still work for you guys, or is that a better day? Everybody saying, okay. So Wednesday still work. So is this the second or third Wednesday? What's the day?
Well, the 26th is a Friday.
Yes.
September.
Yeah, so we're going to do that. One meeting will be on a Friday. So our next meeting will be October. What's that next Wednesday? The second Wednesday?
The 15th.
Is that a tax deadline day for people that got an extension? As you can tell, I'm in that category. 15th.
8th would be the second Wednesday.
It's the 8th?
The 8th would be the second Wednesday.
So will the 8th or the 15th be better? Because we would just have had that other meeting on the 26th. The 15th? Okay. So October 15th, and then the last meeting for the year at this point would be November. And what's that second week coming up before Thanksgiving, I think? The second week is the 12th?
And then Thanksgiving's you have 2 weeks prior.
So the 12th or the 19th of November? 12th, okay. November 12th. So we do have our meeting dates now for at least the rest of this year. If anything changes, we will make sure that we make you aware of it. Do y'all have a preference in terms of what bucket item we take up first? If not, I will choose. Anybody? Is there any particular matter that you would like to get more information on first? Okay, well, we will choose. All right. Are there any other comments, any other public comments that we need to take up at this time? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, y'all don't want to leave? Okay, so Ms. Shelton just made a motion to adjourn. All right, and Ms. Wascom seconds the motion.